Desperate single dad, father begged for milk. He never expected the woman who helped was a millionaire. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Rain hammered the sidewalk like it had something to prove. Michael didn't have an umbrella, just a fraying hoodie pulled low over his face and a baby bundled close to his chest. Her name was Hope, and right now, she was all he had. The baby whimpered again, her cries soft but urgent, lips puckering in search of something he couldn't give. Her formula had run out hours ago. He tried 3 stores already. No card, no cash, no one willing to listen. His shoes left watery footprints across the marble floor as he stepped into the last place he ever thought he'd enter. An upscale grocery store line with organic labels and air that smelled like citrus and judgment. Heads turned. Shoppers paused. The man didn't belong here, and the weight of that truth pressed harder than the rain ever could. Michael didn't look up. He moved fast, straight to the baby aisle, his hands trembling as he grabbed the smallest can of formula. Not the brand she liked, just the one he could reach. He approached the register with quiet desperation, holding the can like it might disappear. The cashier, young and well-groomed, eyed him warily as Michael laid the formula on the counter and started speaking, softly at first. "I don't have money," he said, "but I have ID, my jacket, my phone. I'll come back tomorrow. Just let me take this." The line behind him shifted. A woman in heels tapped her card impatiently. A man with a designer bag scoffed under his breath. Hope began to cry harder. Michael's voice cracked. "She hasn't eaten. Please." The cashier didn't know what to do. His hand hovered over the formula like it might burn him. He looked around, as if waiting for someone else to intervene. No one moved. Michael reached into his pocket, pulled out a worn wallet, empty. His hand shook as he set it down beside the formula. "Please," he whispered, "just help me feed her." The baby's cries filled the space like a siren, piercing and helpless. The cashier flinched. Then came the sound of heels stepping forward. Everyone turned. A woman from the back of the line was already moving. She wore dark jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, and sunglasses that hid most of her face. But her presence was undeniable, like she didn't belong there either, but in a completely different way. She said nothing at first, just stepped beside Michael, picked up the formula, opened it right there at the counter, and knelt. Michael blinked. She shook the bottle, tested the temperature, and gently brought it to the baby's lips. Hope drank like she hadn't tasted anything in days. The store fell silent. The woman finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. No child should cry like that in a room full of people who can afford silence. She turned to the cashier. "Add diapers, wipes, a blanket, and charge it to this." She handed over a black card. Michael could barely breathe. Why would you?" The woman didn't answer. She stood, handed him a receipt and a small bag, then reached in her coat pocket and slipped a simple card into his hand. Just a name, Amelia Hart. And before he could say another word, she walked out, past the shocked faces, past the checkout line, past every unspoken judgment in the room. Hope had fallen asleep. Michael held her tighter, and for the first time that day, the storm felt a little quieter. The baby's cries cracked through the store like a fault line. Shoppers stood motionless. No one stepped forward, except her. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't flinch at the stares. She simply knelt. With deliberate grace, the woman took the formula can from the counter, twisted off the seal, and grabbed a sterile bottle from her oversized tote. Every movement was calm, practiced, like she'd done this before. Michael couldn't speak. His eyes flicked from her to Hope, still wailing, her tiny fists trembling. Then the bottle touched her lips. Hope latched, and the crying stopped. She drank as if nothing else in the world mattered, as if all the pain, hunger, and fear had been waiting for this one moment of peace. Michael's knees almost buckled. His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't seen his daughter this still in hours. The woman's sunglasses remained on, her expression unreadable. But there was something in the way she cradled the bottle, something deeply maternal, not performative, not pitying, just instinct. The cashier said nothing. He looked away, ashamed. The line behind them had broken into whispers, but no one dared speak out loud. Guilt lived in their silence. When Hope finished, the woman slowly rose to her feet. She turned to the cashier, her tone even. "She'll need more of this. At 5 cans. She scanned the aisles with a sharp eye. Also diapers, size 1. Baby wipes. One of those muslin blankets over there. Her finger pointed without hesitation. The cashier blinked. "Right, yes, of course." She reached into her bag again, pulled out a matte black card, and placed it down like it meant nothing. No receipt. Michael stood frozen, formula still warm in his hands. "Wait, why are you doing this?" Her gaze lingered on the baby, now asleep in his arms. "Because babies don't get to choose where they're born," she said quietly. "And they should never go hungry." It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't a line. She wasn't looking for gratitude or validation. She was already turning away. "Wait," Michael said again, breathless. "I don't even know your name." She paused, reached into her coat pocket, handed him a small white card. No number, no company, just 2 words in embossed ink. Amelia Hart. Michael stared down at it like it held the key to another world. It felt weighty, though it weighed nothing. By the time he looked up, she was halfway to the doors. No goodbyes, no cameras, no need for thanks. Just a woman disappearing into the world again, the sound of automatic doors sliding shut behind her. Michael stood there, holding his daughter, his chest heavy with something unfamiliar, something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope, not the baby in his arms. The feeling blooming quietly in his chest. Michael read the card again. Amelia Hart. No title, no phone number, no company. He hadn't stopped thinking about her since that afternoon. The way she moved with certainty, the way she fed Hope like it was the most natural thing in the world, the way she vanished before he could offer even a proper thank you. 3 days later, he still carried the card in his pocket, creased at the corners from constant handling. He typed her name into every search engine he could find. Nothing personal came up. No photos. No interviews. Just business headlines and cryptic mentions in finance blogs. Group donates $2 million to maternal health clinics. Anonymous tech investor backs free housing initiative. Michael's heart jumped when he found an official number listed under a nonprofit, the Hart Foundation. He dialed immediately. Voicemail. He tried again the next day, and the next. Finally, on the 5th call, someone picked up. Hart Foundation. How may I direct your call? Michael stumbled through his words. I met Amelia. She helped me. My daughter. I just need to thank her. Please. The receptionist didn't sound dismissive. Just practiced. Sir, Ms. Hart doesn't take appointments. Is this related to a grant? No, Michael replied. It's personal. There was a pause. Then perhaps you'd like to speak to someone from Outreach. She gave him an address. No promises. No names. He took the train that same day. The building didn't scream money. It whispered purpose. Tucked between a family-run bookstore and a second-hand clinic, the Hart Foundation's headquarters looked like any other mid-sized office. But inside, it breathed a different kind of air, organized, efficient, alive with quiet urgency. A volunteer greeted him. You here for supplies? Michael shook his head. I'm looking for someone. Amelia Hart. The volunteer blinked. You know her? Michael hesitated. She fed my baby. The man nodded slowly, then pointed toward a glass wall lined with photos, hundreds of them. Babies. Families. Handwritten thank you notes. Polaroids from across the country. She doesn't do media, the volunteer said. Doesn't show up for galas. But everything you see here, every box, every dollar, it's her. Michael walked the hallway like he was stepping through a dream. He stopped at one photo, Amelia holding a newborn in a refugee camp overseas. Her hair pulled back, face bare, expression focused. She didn't look rich. She looked real. A soft voice startled him. You're looking for Amelia? A woman stood nearby, clipboard in hand. Michael turned. I need to thank her. She won't ask you to, the woman said, smiling faintly. But she'll be glad to know the baby's okay. He nodded, emotion tightening his throat. Hope. Her name's Hope. The woman smiled again. Fitting. That night, Michael walked home differently. Not because he'd found her, but because he'd learned who she really was. A millionaire? Maybe. A tech prodigy? Definitely. But none of that mattered. Because on the day the world turned its back, she didn't see a homeless man or a burden. She saw a father, and that meant more than anything money could ever buy. Amelia's world hadn't always smelled of eucalyptus candles and quiet offices. Once it reeked of hospital disinfectant, cold pavement, and the ache of being 17 and utterly alone. Years before she became a name whispered in philanthropic circles, before her business outpaced competitors twice her age, Amelia Hart stood outside a city clinic with trembling hands and a newborn wrapped in her last clean sweater. The wind had bitten through every layer. She remembered thinking the air itself was too sharp for a baby to breathe. Her son's name was Caleb, born 7 weeks early, barely 4 pounds, lungs as fragile as paper. She hadn't had a baby shower, no crib, no family waiting outside. Her parents had locked the door when they found out. Friends faded fast once diapers replaced parties. That morning, her milk hadn't come in. Panic had. She remembered banging on the glass of the clinic with one hand while trying to calm Caleb with the other. The nurse wouldn't open early. No one else even looked her way. She sank to the ground, sobbing, whispering apologies he couldn't understand. By the time the doors opened, it was too late. Caleb never cried again. Michael didn't know any of this. He only knew the woman who'd fed his baby without flinching, the one who left before the cameras ever showed up. But on the other side of the city, Amelia still carried Caleb, in memory, in mission, in the quiet rage that came from knowing how the world failed parents who had nothing but love to give. She'd promised herself no other baby would go cold because someone lacked formula. No other mother would beg while the world stared and stayed silent. That vow became a code. She poured it into every algorithm she built, every grant she funded, every staffer she trained. Her success wasn't born from ambition. It was born from loss. The kind that never leaves. The kind that doesn't shout but simmers. Even now, years later, she sometimes found herself buying a bottle of formula she didn't need, leaving it in shelters, sliding it into grocery bags when no one was looking. Not out of charity, out of memory. The day she saw Michael, soaked and holding his wailing daughter, she didn't see a stranger. She saw herself, years ago. Same shaking hands, same cracked voice, same desperation disguised as courage. She didn't think. She moved. Feeding hope had felt like reaching back through time and holding her own son one last time. Back at her apartment, Amelia sat on the edge of her bed that night, staring at a faded hospital bracelet tucked in a box beneath her nightstand. It still had his name. Caleb Hart, 1:17 a.m., 3 pounds, 14 ounces. She ran her thumb over the worn plastic. Then she reached for her phone and typed 3 words into a new message. He's doing well. No context. No signature. She deleted it before she hit send. Some things were meant to stay unspoken. But when the world asked why Amelia Hart cared so much about babies that weren't hers, she always gave the same answer. They are. It was a rainy Thursday when Michael saw her again. He was in the back of the shelter, breaking down boxes of baby formula and stacking blankets into bins when he heard a voice near the entrance. Calm, precise, giving instructions. Familiar. He stepped out, wiping his hands on his jeans, and there she was. Amelia Hart. Same quiet confidence. Same graceful stillness. But this time, she wasn't just the woman who'd fed his baby. She was the name on the check that had kept the shelter running this winter. Her foundation had donated supplies, installed new cribs, even paid for heat. And now she was here, in person. Her eyes landed on him and paused. Not with confusion. Recognition. He gave a sheepish nod. Didn't expect to see you again. Amelia smiled faintly. I could say the same. It was awkward for a second, just long enough for the moment to stretch too tight. Then he gestured toward the stack of blankets. I guess we both do undercover work. Her smile deepened, a flicker of humor softening her face. How's your daughter? She asked. He took a breath. Better now. Her name's Hope. The word hung in the air between them. A single syllable that made Amelia blink too fast. That's a beautiful name. He didn't explain it was because of her. He didn't need to. They sat down on a bench near the front doors as the rain thudded gently outside. No camera crews. No strangers staring. Just two people trying to figure out how they'd ended up in the same story again. Michael glanced at her. You didn't have to stop that day. I was just some guy. You weren't invisible, she said quietly. I felt like I was, he replied. Until you looked at me. Amelia didn't answer immediately. She traced a pattern along the edge of the bench with her fingertip. Then she said, I used to be invisible, too. For years. Her voice didn't crack, but something in it wavered. I know what it's like to ask for help and watch people turn away. Or worse, pretend they never saw you. Michael nodded. Sometimes the worst part isn't being rejected. It's being erased. They sat in silence after that. A quiet, mutual understanding settling between them. No performance. No debt. Just truth. He turned slightly. Look, I don't know what you're planning with all this outreach stuff, but if you ever need help, I'd like to be part of it. She didn't react right away. Instead, she reached into her satchel and pulled out a folder. Plain, thick, no logo. Just a tab marked Outreach Pilot, Community Recovery. She held it out to him. Michael blinked. Is this a maybe? It's a beginning, she said. Later that night, Michael stood outside the shelter's side door with the folder clutched under his arm. The rain had stopped, and the air was sharp with the scent of wet concrete. He looked up at the sky, not for answers, just to feel something bigger than himself again. He'd walked into a grocery store weeks ago with nothing but an apology and a baby that wouldn't stop crying. Now, somehow, he was walking toward purpose, and this time someone saw him. Michael never asked for a second chance. He'd barely dared to imagine one. But when it came, it didn't arrive with fireworks or press releases. It came in boxes. Diapers, wipes, bottles, folded lists. Then doors that stuck. Clipboards and checklists. It came in the form of work. Honest, unfiltered, needed. He joined Amelia's grassroots team quietly. No title. No fanfare. Just a man who understood what desperation looked like and wasn't afraid to sit with it. His first week on the job, he loaded supplies into the back of a van until his arms ached. The second week, he helped a teenage mom who hadn't eaten in 2 days. By the third, he found himself kneeling beside a father in a parking lot, gently handing him a warm bottle and saying, "You're not alone." Michael never told these people his story. He didn't need to. His presence said enough, his calm, his eyes, the way he crouched instead of towering over, how he listened instead of fixing. He wasn't a miracle. He was a mirror, and they saw themselves in him. Hope was thriving. Her cheeks had filled out. She giggled now, reached for his beard with tiny fingers, babbled to the ceiling fan like it was a friend. He still lived small, a rented room over a garage, donated crib, secondhand toys, but there was light now. Not just electricity, real light. Amelia came by sometimes, usually when no one else noticed. She'd linger at the edge of a warehouse drop or a volunteer meetup. Say little, observe much. She wasn't watching for mistakes. She was witnessing something she had once needed too, the dignity of building back, brick by brick. He never asked why she picked him that day. She never explained. Some stories don't need retelling, only living. As the months passed, Michael's name began to circulate, not in headlines, but in conversations. Social workers whispered about the man who made frightened dads cry with relief. Shelter coordinators called to ask if he could train their new intake teams. Parents clutched his hand like a lifeline. He never wore a badge, didn't print a title, but he became something rare, a man people trusted before they knew why. Then came the questions. A city council member asked who he was. A journalist wanted a quote. Someone posted a photo. Michael kneeling on a sidewalk, gently adjusting a baby sling for a panicked mother. The caption went viral. "This man saved me with a bottle and no judgment." Suddenly, he was being called Amelia Hart's right hand. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. One evening, as they loaded boxes into a van, he looked over and said, "You know, they're starting to call me your shadow." Amelia didn't flinch. "Let them." He smiled, sweat on his brow, dirt under his nails. "I'm not used to being seen." She tossed him a water bottle. "You're not here to be seen, Michael. You're here to see." And he did. In every hungry baby, he saw hope. In every frightened parent, he saw himself. And somehow, in every quiet nod from Amelia, he saw a future neither of them dared to say out loud. Not yet. The lights were hotter than expected. Michael sat stiffly in the studio chair, fingers laced tightly, eyes flicking between the host and the crowd gathered behind the cameras. He'd worn his cleanest shirt, borrowed, and shaved that morning with a trembling hand. He wasn't used to microphones, makeup, or millions of watching eyes. But across from him, Amelia sat poised and calm. Not in one of her signature black gowns or hidden in the back row, but front and center on the stage. A place she had always avoided until now. It was a charity telethon, a fundraiser for families in crisis. The producer had begged her to appear. She'd agreed on one condition, that Michael speak too. He hadn't wanted to. "I'm not a spokesperson," he'd said. "You're the only one who can tell the truth," she replied. Now he sat with every muscle clenched, heart pounding, palms sweating. The host asked questions, light ones at first, about the foundation's work, its mission, its reach. Then came the real one. "Michael," the host said gently, "can you tell us what happened that day?" Michael inhaled, and then he began. "I walked into that store with a baby who hadn't eaten in hours. I had nothing but a soaked jacket, an ID, and a bottle of hope. I didn't expect help. I expected another rejection." The studio went silent. He continued, voice steady but thick. "And then someone knelt down, not to pity me, not to preach, but to feed my child. With her own hands. She bought more than milk that day. She bought diapers, blankets, and time." He paused, then turned slowly to Amelia. "But what she really gave me was something harder to find, dignity. She didn't feed just my baby. She fed the part of me that believed I was still human." A murmur rippled through the room. Cameras clicked. A producer dabbed their eyes. Amelia's gaze didn't leave his. She looked calm, but her throat moved once, barely, when she swallowed. And then, without warning, she leaned forward and reached for a microphone. "I wasn't supposed to be in that store," she began, her voice quieter than usual. "I was supposed to be across town, in a board meeting. But something made me stop. A pause. I saw him, Michael, standing there, desperate. And I saw myself. The room shifted. The audience leaned in. I was 16 when I begged for formula outside a pharmacy," she continued. "My son didn't make it. I've built empires since then. But that loss, it never leaves you." Gasps whispered through the audience. "I didn't help that day because I'm rich," she said. "I helped because once I was poor, ashamed, and invisible. And I swore no parent would feel alone in front of me again." Her voice broke then, but only for a second. The broadcast aired live. Within hours, it was clipped, subtitled, reposted across continents. Viewers didn't see a tech mogul or a struggling dad. They saw the flicker of something deeply human. They saw a child named Hope whose name was now more than symbolic. It was a call to listen, to act. Donations flooded the foundation's site. But more than that, stories poured in. Strangers shared their lowest moments, their quiet heroes, their invisible wounds. And for the first time in years, Amelia let the cameras in, not to capture her success, but to magnify something much greater. The reminder that the smallest act of kindness can echo louder than wealth, and a bottle of milk in the right hands can change not just a day, but a life. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Mention the names Michael, Amelia, and Little Hope to show us you watched till the end. What would you have done if you were in Amelia's shoes? Or Michael's? Your voice matters just like their story did. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change someone's life. Let's keep spreading that light. One story, one comment, and one share at a time.